arguably the most valuable team in the NBA, inarguably actually, arguably the greatest team in NBA history, deciding JJ Redick should be their next head coach?
Look, I mentioned it yesterday. I think they should have looked at Monty Williams. Now, and I heard, and other people talked about it and were like, well, the timing, if it was a little different. Why? You waited this long. And look, you'd like to have a coach before the draft. But it is this draft pick for the Lakers. It's not like essential that you had a head coach in place. They tried to hire Monty a few years ago. He said went to Phoenix. I know it didn't work out in Dallas or in
also,
Detroit.
Are we to believe JJ's been scouting the draft? Like a heavy?
Right.
Like,
I mean, it's just right. I don't think that matters. He's going to give a little input, and that'll be that. Anthony Davis had a great relationship with Monty Williams when he was in New Orleans.
Of course.
And was upset when they fired him, had a great relationship with his family, said he cared more about the players as people than play. Like, really liked Monty. I think that, again, at least interviewing. Consider it. See what he would do with the team before you go out and make this hire. Look, JJ, maybe will he be harder? Will he coach LeBron? Because on the podcast, he does push back a little bit. So maybe he'll coach LeBron and do what they need. But it's just a complete, question mark as to how good he's going to be.
I mean, it's a hell of a gamble for the end of LeBron's career. It would be objectively hilarious if LeBron didn't go back to L.A. After all this, launch a podcast with the guy, he goes to L.A., and then LeBron's like, I think someone else might be better off coaching me. So, I mean, it's Hollywood. It's a compelling story.
Well, so it's a compelling, and so much of the Lakers' business is based on compelling stories.
Yes.
Right. I'm glad you brought up the LeBron thing because I want to address that. It would be unfair of me to say JJ Redick's not going to be a good NBA head coach, just like it would be unfair of me to say he's going to be a good NBA head coach because he is being hired with as thin, I can say this off the top of my head knowing it's true, as thin of a coaching resume as any coach that's ever taken the job in modern NBA history. Because it couldn't be thinner. It's just to never be a part of an NBA staff, front office, and to coach at the big-time high school, let alone college, G League, NBA, none of that. You couldn't have a thinner coaching resume. So there's nothing to judge it on other than vibes and guess. So I don't know. I am skeptical. My biggest concern with JJ, honestly, is he appears to me to be very, very online and very, very aware of criticism of himself.
Yes.
And I think that can be a real detriment if you're the head coach of a basketball team.
In L.A.?
In L.A.
You can't have rabbit ears.
That's what I mean. Head coach of the Lakers, I should say, more so than anything. The LeBron piece, though, if I may just pivot it there quickly on the fly. Just because you want to do a podcast with a guy is not, to me, evidence you want him to be your head coach. And I'm not saying, again, I give the audience my word. I have not talked to LeBron, anyone in his camp, about this. I am simply saying, just logically speaking, there are plenty of people that I adore or would adore working with that if they were like, hey, we need a new showrunner for First Things First. What about Danny? I might be like, hey, love him on the show, love him as a guy, think we could maybe get someone with a little more experience at it. So the reason I'm saying that is this idea that they are doing this to appease LeBron assumes this is what LeBron wants. And the one piece of info we do have definitively is when they were interviewing Dan Hurley, LeBron reached out to Dan to tell him he would have his support and his buy-in if he were there, if he stays.
Hold on, though.
Yeah.
And I think he'll stay.
Right. I mean, you're right. It's not a guarantee that LeBron wants the guy that he hosts a podcast with to be his head coach. But it's a pretty safe assumption that LeBron's on board with this, right?
Well, so I think...
Yeah, I'm sure he's on board at the very least. No question.
It'd be a hell of a coincidence.
I don't think he might not like the hire. I can't see any way he doesn't like the hire.
I guess my point is this. You have heard the same thing I have heard, Brew, which is he has not chimed in with the Lakers front office. He is staying out of it. We know he endorsed to the other guy another guy. So if I was really hoping someone was going to get a job and then someone else that I don't have a long-standing relationship with is interviewing for that job, I might not submarine the guy's chances, but I wouldn't call him and give him a vote of confidence if I was super stoked about the other person. So again, this is, I'm being totally candid. It's pure speculation. But I just think people are assuming because Bron likes JJ doing the podcast with him that he likes the idea of having to play for him. I don't know if that is or isn't true.
But I think that is a fair assumption or a logical assumption for people to make. And I agree with you. We've talked to people that I don't think LeBron had anything to do with this hire. But it is logical for people to assume that he's the greatest player in the franchise and he's had say in franchises before and he's doing a podcast with the guy. So I don't think people are can blame people for jumping to that conclusion. I will say this, too. Most of the players who have coached without any experience were either kind of removed from the era in which they played. Pat Riley, I know he was like an assistant, but Steve Kerr, who worked with the Suns and ran their front office but hadn't coached.
Mark Jackson.
He was removed. Right. Or the second thing I was going to say, or they were more respected players. And JJ was a solid player. He was respected in that regard. Mark Jackson was not a star.
He's an all-star,
but he was darn
at one point.
Yeah, I think he made one all-star
that's what
team.
I mean, yeah.
But
Ty
he
Lue,
was
Jason
highly
Kidd.
respected as a top, that tier player. And Ty Lue, though, was an assistant for a while. So I'm saying guys that went straight to head coaching.
Gotcha,
Larry Bird. Obviously, you respect Larry Bird. Steve Magic,
right. And even though Magic didn't
do
work.
well. Nash didn't do well, but he had people's respect. Isaiah Thomas, who had worked for franchises, obviously, but he was a guy, he's a legend. So I think the questions, JJ was just playing 3 years ago.
Right.
And a lot of these guys remember taking him to the hole. Being able to play better than him. And so I wonder if that could be something he has to overcome as well.
I'm sure we'll have more on this in a bit. Do you think they'll still do the pod?
That would be awesome.
That would be. You know what? You know what?
No, you can't.
Why not?
You
can still do the pod.
There is no way you can do that pod.
Okay, well, I don't know.
Why? It would be awesome.
Think about how many.
Why should you?
Brew?
The Kelsey brothers do a pod.
Yeah.
Draymond does a pod. It's new media.
This is your
new media.
Doug Gottlieb is going to do a radio show while coaching a team.
Way.
He can do a pod.
LeBron, my advice, don't do the pod, man.
My advice, do the pod.
It'd be
Stephen A is going to get a lot of angry texts from people. Oh, boy, if they do that pod. Brew, how should LeBron feel about this being his new head coach? JJ being his new head coach?
I think he should, just looking at the way he's handled things, I would be shocked if he's not fine with it. Like actually more than fine with it. I'm not saying he has something to do with the hire, but I can't believe he's displeased with this. He's LeBron James. And LeBron, I don't think cares what a lot of people think of him. All right, so I don't think he's just saying, oh, they're going to think I made the hire if I do. If he really thought there's no way we can put our team in the hands of a guy that has never coached, say something. Not publicly, but say something to Rob Pelinka and Jeannie Buss. Like, look,
really say something to Linda Rambis if you want to get things moving in that organization.
Whoever, but make your voice known, and you've earned that. So I think LeBron stayed out of it. Maybe they were like, hey, you good with this? Or to Rich, is LeBron good with this? And I'm sure he has to be fine with it.
Go ahead.
I mean, it would go down as one of the most dysfunctional things I can remember in pro sports if they hired JJ Redick, LeBron's podcast co-host, and then LeBron was furious about it, opted out and left. How much egg on the face would there be for the Lakers? And I know they've been dysfunctional and have not handled these things great, but that's a level of dysfunction too far for me to believe. So I'm with you. I think LeBron is, at a minimum, fine with it and probably pretty excited about it.
He clearly respects JJ's basketball knowledge.
So, yeah, I think so. I guess, and again, I acknowledge that my opinion on this seems to be out of step with nearly everyone else. So sometimes that just, means I'm on the cutting edge. But sometimes it means I'm wrong. Right? No, sometimes it means I'm wrong. I think that LeBron can really enjoy talking basketball with him and respect his basketball knowledge, but also as a one of the smartest players ever, and a guy who has had kind of every different type of coach you can have. He's been in the league so long. He had a great coach in Spo. He had Ty Lue, who was an unknown and not unknown, but an unproven, who has now proven to be a great coach. A guy came over from Europe who it didn't work, and David Blatt, a retread, and Vogel had every type. I think he knows what makes and doesn't make a good head coach, and someone who can get through to not only the best players, but the most out of the other players. I think that is asking a lot of JJ Redick. I think that it is, and if you're
just because he doesn't have any experience?
Yes, because.
So do you think LeBron's disappointed?
I think that LeBron James did not want to be in a position where I have to choose to either leave Los Angeles or put the last couple years of my career in the hands of the least experienced coach in NBA history. I do not believe when LeBron started, and I know that this is, again, out of step with what a lot of people think. And I don't know what you think on this one, Brew. I do not think when LeBron started this podcast with JJ Redick, he was like, this is the first domino to him being my head coach.
I agree with you.
So I don't think LeBron, when things were clearly going the wrong way with Darvin Ham, thought, whomever it is, my next head coach is going to be the least experienced head coach arguably ever and younger than me. I just don't think he thought that's where this the train was going to end, which is why I think he was excited about the idea that it could be Dan Hurley.
Then he should have said something. He talked to Hurley. And maybe he did, but he should have said something to the front office if he's that opposed to it. I don't think he's opposed to it. I do think that I don't see him leaving.
I don't either.
I see him leaving there, so I'm sure he's fine with it.
I don't see him leaving, but if he stays with the Lakers, it is because there are a lot of factors at play, and it's, to me, will signal, and this would have been no matter who they hired, that there wasn't a coach they were going to hire that he was going to leave.
That was who else out there? Who would he have preferred? Because it's not like a great list of.
Well,
you
mentioned Monty Williams, who's new. I think Sam Cassell at least makes more sense. Like there is more.
I think Mark Jackson made more sense. But again, if you want one of those guys, push for him.
I thought,
You're LeBron James.
So that's a fair criticism. Is that if it should have been, he should have been more vocal in the coaching search.
I also don't
that
think players care about experience as much as we do.
Yeah, we don't.
Really don't.
Maybe.
I agree.
We don't have a lot of time for this next segment. Luckily, the answer is no. Canadian stop at Chiefs 3-3. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get more from the show and to check out clips from other shows on FS1.